What's up, everyone? Tara Roberts here with 4 for 4, and today we are talking about a topic that might get a little bit heated. Early round fantasy football bust. And I've got 5 players that could be early round bust based off their current ADP. To start things off, I hate to do this one, I really do, but Breece Hall is being drafted as a top 12 running back coming off a significant injury, and we all know his upside is unbelievable, but it might be a little bit bullish on a guy who could have a limited role through the beginning portions of the season if he is even available to start the season at all. The Jets have been rumored as potential landing spots for a wide variety of veteran running backs on the market, but even if they opt to keep their running back room as is, the Jets have more than enough young bodies available to limit Hall's workload as long as they need to help ease him back into action. So while I want to believe in the upside that I know Breece Hall is capable of, we've seen time and time again, players coming off of torn ACLs aren't rushed back into a huge workload immediately. And by the time he reaches a normal workload, you could already be fighting for your fantasy playoff life. The next player is personally painful for me. I feel very uncomfortable drafting Travis Etienne at his ADP. Sadly, he's a potential early round bust. A lot of fantasy analysts are referencing Tank Bigsby as the big issue with Travis Etienne, and while I am concerned that he could eat into Etienne's workload, my concerns for Travis Etienne started well before Bigsby was even drafted. Looking at last year's stats, Etienne's overall workload was fine after the James Robinson trade, but from a fantasy perspective, Etienne wasn't productive enough on the ground to make up for the lack of upside that he has through the air. On the ground, Etienne's 220 carries were 13th most among running backs. Unfortunately, though, those touches resulted in just 5 rushing touchdowns. Through the air, Travis Etienne had just 35 receptions on 45 targets for just 316 yards and no touchdowns. That's just not going to cut it. And to put that into perspective, those 45 targets were less than Samaje Perine had, Devin Singletary, Michael Carter, Rex Burkhead. That is not okay. And I don't think that we're going to see a significant uptick in those numbers. Doug Peterson's offense just hasn't traditionally used running backs as high volume receivers. And the Jets added Calvin Ridley, narrowing the receiving opportunities even further. So combine the rumors of the potential workload reduction for Etienne with limited touchdown opportunities and poor usage through the air, I just can't make the math work for Etienne to have actual RB1 upside. Another potential early round bust is Joe Mixon. It's possible that Joe Mixon has a bounce back season, but I'm gonna have to miss it because I am 100% out on Mixon. I hear your arguments. But Tera, his ADP is super reasonable. But Tera, he is the clear RB1 on one of the best offenses in the league. I hear you, but I just can't get on board. Mixon's 2022 statistics were aggressively propped up by his Week 9 performance against Carolina, where Mixon had 22 carries, 153 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, 4 receptions, 458 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Excluding that game, Mixon was a lead back with a total of 3 rushing touchdowns over the course of 14 games. That is terrifying. Some people might look at that and say that just means that positive regression is coming, and I could buy that if it wasn't for the aforementioned dreadful efficiency. Mixon averaged 58.1 rushing yards per game and 3.9 yards per carry. That's not good. Mixon's saving grace is volume and receptions. But if he gets out there looking like he did last year, the Bengals could veer away from him and reduce his workload. And without that volume, Mixon is a complete bust. For our next player, let me preface this by saying I want nothing more for Jahmyr Gibbs than to thrive in the NFL. I am a PPR kind of fantasy manager. Give me receptions on receptions with a side of receptions. I want that Austin Eckler special. Gibbs is taking over DeAndre Swift's role, and we've seen that role can produce in the past very good numbers, capable of being an overall RB1. Gibbs has the talent to repeat that type of production. But at Gibbs' current ADP, we're leaving 0 room for error. The big problem and why there is so much inherent risk in Gibbs is that we saw the Lions use a system where they had 2 very distinct roles last year at running back. And it made sense. Williams is a strong goal line back, and although he's had some success as a receiver in Green Bay's system, he's just not typically been used as a traditional 3-down back. But traditional 3-down back usage is David Montgomery's bread and butter. And it is very possible this becomes less of a goal line versus receiving back situation and more of a 1A, 1B mix of 2 guys handling the workload fairly evenly, which might limit the overall upside for Gibbs that we need for him to have to thrive at such a high ADP. And my final early round bust is going to be a bit of a controversial one. It is Jonathan Taylor. To be clear, Taylor will absolutely have a bounce back season. That is not even a question. We're talking an extremely talented running back that is the clear RB1 on his team, who finished as RB33 in PPR last year. It is virtually impossible for him to not bounce back, health permitting. But will he bounce back to numbers worthy of being a first-round pick? That is the big problem here and why he's a potential bust. Outside of Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor is the only running back being drafted in the top 10 that has to contend with a true rushing quarterback. It's bad enough having to split your workload with a rushing quarterback, but it's even worse. It is even worse when that quarterback is a rookie, because there are two very real outcomes here. One, if a rookie quarterback's best attribute is his legs, when things go sideways, he may be overly reliant on them. For Jonathan Taylor, although he technically isn't a receiving back, he is a true 3-down back, and those checkdowns are very important to his fantasy production in PPR. Issue number 2, rushing quarterbacks often mean less goal line opportunities, and Jonathan Taylor needs every single touchdown he can get to achieve his glorious 2001 season, which included 18 rushing touchdowns. So while I'm very confident that Taylor is an RB1, he'll be a top 12 back, I'm not so confident that I'm willing to take him at his current ADP. If he finishes as RB10, that is a solid football season. I will consider that a success from him. But from a fantasy perspective and drafting him at his ADP, that is a bust. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe and like this video. Comment below which of these players you are in or out on, and stick around for more fantastic off-season content.